level. And we recognize that it's a hard time of the year to get everybody to be able to come and be present, but this evening we wanted to recognize our state participants from the wrestling team and also the speech team as well. And I think we should start with our speech entrant, and maybe because she's in speech, maybe she wants to give a speech. But we'll bring Reese up here in a second. And Reese, this is one of the board's favorite things to do. They started years ago to be able to recognize your outstanding work, and we understand that this isn't something that you just waved a magic wand and you were able to do, right? You put your blood, sweat, and tears into this, and it wasn't just an accident, right? And that we just have so much respect for you, and we thank you for representing us and the Tigers in our just way of being here on the biggest stages, right? And we understand that you probably have some more to do, right? What grade are you in?
I am a sophomore.
A sophomore. So do you have any goals in terms of taking it to the next level? What would be your goals in terms of accomplishments in speech?
I don't really have any goals, but I plan on double entering in like interpretation categories to try and like expand what I can do and try different things out. So.
And what was the competition that you were in this year?
I was in the dramatic interpretation category.
And can you share with the board maybe a little bit about what does that mean?
Well, it's usually a snippet taken from like a play, and they shorten it into like a 10-minute speech, and it's usually something that's, I don't know, a little bit more serious, and yeah, so it's more on the dramatic side of the speech.
Okay.
Yeah.
And which one did you pick?
My speech was about the Challenger space shuttle explosion.
Oh my goodness. And that right away is like what brought us right back to that time, because we were all, that's like one of those things that like everybody remembers where they were when that happened, right? And you probably understood that as you were researching that event. Wow, super cool. Does the board have any questions of Reese before we bring her up? No? All right. Reese, on behalf of Princeton Public Schools, I'd like to present you with the board commendations for the spring. And I'd ask you to come up here and shake your hand, and then we'll have you go shake the hand of each board member, and then we'll do a picture. So, congratulations.
Congratulations.
And Principal Muckenher. So now we gotta get you up here. Where do we wanna do this? Yeah, come in front, come in front.
Last year was such a big group of kids in here.
Well, there's a lot of things going on tonight. And we had robotics, we had to move robotics into next week, or next month, so it's just some scheduling issues. Awesome, very cool. Now, in their absence, I think it's important that we recognize other students getting commendations this evening. I won't speak much to this other than just to acknowledge them. Ellie Gruber also received a commendation from the board, and we'll make sure that we get this to them. On the state wrestling team, we acknowledge Levi Thompson, Tyler Wells. I think we'd be remiss without acknowledging he's the first 4-time state champion wrestler, maybe one of the most accomplished athletes to ever come through Princeton High School. So pretty amazing there. And then also Parker Adkins, all-state wrestling entrant. So let's give them a hand in their absence as well. All right. And that concludes our commendations, and I think maybe we can segue into another kind of commendation. And I'll turn it over to Andrea and she'll share some important information about our not our speech program, our Spanish immersion program.
Yep, and first, there's actually 2 students that we're gonna recognize tonight with the Minnesota Bilingual SEALs program. So we have 2 students in the class of 2023 who recently took their Spanish language proficiency assessment, and they both qualified for, Andrea Govea qualified for the Minnesota Gold Bilingual Seal. And this certificate says, in recognition of the language proficiency level in spoken and written Spanish, because they do take the test in 4 domains, reading, writing, listening, and speaking, and you have to have a certain score across all domains in order to qualify for the Gold Bilingual Seal. And it says bilingual and biliteracy skills are an asset to the state's global community and enhance personal education and career opportunities. So she is receiving the Minnesota Gold Bilingual Seal. And then we have another student, Jason Morales, who's receiving the Minnesota World Language Proficiency Certificate. So they were both invited to come tonight, but they couldn't attend, so they deserve a round of applause too.
Yeah. And that concludes our portion of the board showcase. Thank you for coming. You're welcome to stay the whole meeting, or by all means, enjoy the weather.
Thank you. Okay, that, okay.
Will you deliver these? Yeah, they're all high schoolers. Perfect, thank you.
All right, there are no citizens' comments. We'll move on to board member committee reports, starting with Dawn.
I had a long-range planning committee, the school board scholar banquet, and then the Princeton chamber luncheon that was held at the middle school.
All right, Jen?
At the school board scholar banquet, finance meeting, and then the agenda planning.
All right, I had, the long-range planning was to tour the Catholic Church, and just as a facilities option, and Ben will speak more about that later. I went to the chamber luncheon and listened to the state of the city and the state of the district, both really interesting, really worthwhile. And the school board scholar banquet, and then I also attended the school board, or the school scholarship event, the high school Dollars for Scholars that gave away $130-some thousand that night. So amazing, such an amazing event. If you need a positive in your life, just to go sit in the back and listen to stories of, I don't know, there must be, Barbara, there are 100 scholarships on that sheet, 75 probably.
At least.
Yeah, and the deep stories that are behind those, and the generosity that comes from those individuals in the community, and the deep roots of people that come back from, years ago, and classes from years ago, is just a really amazing. And then I also attended the Princeton baseball, Monticello baseball varsity game last week, so that's always cool when we play. I have a grandson in Monticello, and when we play home, and it's still wear my Monticello wear. Yeah. So
We'll let it go as one.
So blood's thicker than water. Huh? We'll give you a pass.
I also attended the luncheon and the banquet, and I was at the choir concert last night, and it was the last one of the year for the high school, and I always think it's so fun at the end. They have anyone who is an alumni of the choir come up, and it was just really cool to see some of the people, the age range of people that still go up to sing the Irish Blessing or whatever it is. So it was really cool.
all right. We'll move on then to superintendent. There is no student council report, and we'll move on to superintendent report.
Yeah, Winnie sends her regrets. We acknowledge that it's difficult for some of our student council reps and our student board members to come because they're so busy, and she happened to have a track meet this evening. Well, I wasn't expecting Barb to be here, but by golly, she's here. And I think it would be foolish of us not to acknowledge the fact that she's been here with us for 10 years, probably the last time she'll ever step foot in a Princeton school board meeting, and she'll be running the show at her future school district as a superintendent. I'm super proud of her. I know she's gonna do a great job. And on behalf of the school district, thank you, Barb, for everything that you've done.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Will you have a hotline to Ben Barton's personal phone?
Well, I got her number. I'll be calling her. She's, you know, she's good at like most everything I'm not good at, so I won't lean on her a lot.
We're a good team. I'm the policy wonk or hawk or whatever the term is, so, I'll miss working with you on that.
Well, let's see, I'll share out, most of you should have received plenty of emails from different associations, but one I just point out to is the latest MREA one. They had some runs in there you can look at Princeton to see exactly, well, we think exactly what we should be receiving for dollars, because this is run through all the committees and is, from what I understand, it's right in that position to be voted on and will likely be approved. Okay, so there's pieces that we did have in our budgeting process, which was the 4%. It will be the 4%. Okay, so that will stay the same. There is a little over $7,000 for menstrual products. As you've seen, that as part of the legislature, that money will be coming. About $10,000, a little over $10,000 in additional revenue for English learner revenue. A little over $20,000 for American Indian aid. Student support personnel, I believe they're referring to more counseling social workers, approximately $41,000 there. Some media specialists, about $50,000 in that area. And then the cross subsidy came out to be about 1.4 and some change. Now all of these numbers are based upon what they have in for our student enrollment, which could change.
Estimates probably from a year ago because we changed it at levy time.
Yeah, so these numbers likely actually will go up, correct, Michelle?
No, because the SPED's probably pretty accurate, but they're using a year ago, we're planning on a 35 student reduction, so our calculations will be different.
Okay. So these are based upon the numbers that they have. So I just wanted to point that out, and if you want more details, they actually have FY25 in their runs as well, so please take a look at that. I had the great opportunity to meet with our mayor of Princeton this morning. That's something that we're trying to do more often, on a regular basis, just to talk about collaboration between the city and the school district, and finding what's in common and how we can work together to improve the quality of life for all of the members of our society and our community. Want to just remind board members that we do have our staff years of service and staff appreciation luncheons that we're doing the tour on. We did the middle school last week. I did have my tire notes wrong. I think I had it in there as Thursday. It's actually tomorrow. You should have a calendar invite. So just take a look at those calendar invites. Want you to know the middle school land that we've had, that we had a previous signed purchase agreement on. I indicated to you last meeting that we likely need to go out and see if there's other interested parties. I did connect with the group that we previously had the agreement on, and let them know that. I met with them today so that they're aware of this, so we were just upfront in that process. Sue alluded to a tour of Christ Our Light Church. We did look at that mostly to try and see if that would fit and solve some issues that we have for our lack of space, particularly in our early childhood programming. That is something that we feel strongly that we could add 2 to 3 more preschool, all day, everyday preschool classes. We have that demand, we just don't have the space. After looking at all the pros and cons administratively, we are not recommending to move forward with analyzing that as an option. We really have it boiled down to, for us, to find 2 or 3 more classrooms for us to fulfill the current needs in our community. One way we feel like we could do that is if we could potentially find a suitable replacement for space of our Onward program. And that's something that we're going to be analyzing, some of that possibility to do that, so we could keep all of our early childhood programming under one roof, which would be here, and finding a different, equally as good or better space for Onward that's its own separate program. So that's kind of what we're recommending there. We'll see what happens. That's easier said than done, right? We have 2.5 weeks left in the school year. When we started the school year, the messaging to staff was the idea of focus, to try and block off all the noise and focus on the job at hand, which is teaching and learning and focusing on our kids. And when I reflect back on the year, all the ups and downs of the school year, I really feel like we did accomplish that. Our staff worked really, really hard, and we made a huge difference in the lives of our students. And we're pleased with that, but we're not satisfied. We know that we have lots more work to do. And as we're appreciating the end of this school year, we're really refocusing ourselves to do even better next year. That's the great thing that we have in public education, is that we get a refresh start every school year, and we can't squander that opportunity. So, of course, I could talk on and on about a variety of different topics. I'll close my remarks unless you have any specific questions that you'd like to ask me.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. We'll move on to approving the agenda as presented. I entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion made by Melissa, second by Chad. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll discuss and act on the previous board meeting minutes from May 2nd. I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
So moved.
Motion made by Don, second by Melissa. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We'll move on to the consent agenda, and I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. So moved by Chad, second by Sue. Is there any discussion?
Just one thing I think it's important for the board to know on the student handbooks is that I had Emily put together and send a list of a summary of changes and modifications so that you have that. And that I also think it's important for you to know that there is clerical work that will be done on these handbooks throughout the summer, right? So we get the procedures and everything approved, but then what will happen is the secretarial staff, as part of their summer work, they'll go through this entire document. They'll, make sure the table of contents matches pages, make sure that references to policies are linked, and if there's any references to staff members or rooms or anything that may have changed, they'll go through that and make those changes throughout the summer. So you will be approving something that will be modified, but it will only be the small clerical things that isn't really related to policy or procedure.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll move on to the information part of the meeting and start with Spanish immersion.
Okay, I'll start with that, and just by chance, we have Andrea here who is really a huge leader in that program, so I'll lean on her a little bit throughout my discussion with you. It's more of a point of information that I wanted to share with the board. As you know, when we started Spanish immersion, there was a first class, the inaugural class, right, that went through there, and that class now will be getting into the 8th grade, I believe. Yeah. Right, so when you think about this journey with these students starting in kindergarten, and many of you were on the board when that program started, right? That group of, that cohort of students is moving into the 8th grade. And, you know, every year that group moves into that next age level, it's kind of like a new first for us to try and administer programming based upon the variables that we have that given year, based upon budget and staffing and the number of students enrolled in the program. They can fluctuate, right? The one thing that's challenging with the program is once they start, there's a very small chance that we will add, right, to the program, but there's a higher chance that students may either move out or choose that they would prefer to be in the non-Spanish immersion program. So as these first groups move through, now we're into the middle school. I think we've done a nice job of developing programming there to maintain our middle school to be Spanish immersion and fit that criteria by having 2 hours of Spanish for each of the students, right? It has recently come to our attention that some students have chosen to withdraw from the program that has made the numbers even smaller, okay? We've analyzed the different options related to that, and I wanted you to know that we feel strongly that we should actually continue on with that program to see how we can work the bugs out, right?
Is there like a reason that we can identify that they're withdrawing, or?
A few. And my thought process has evolved on this, but one of the biggest reasons that we found is that there's just more opportunities for electives and other classes in the middle school, that there's only so many periods in a day, and when they're getting into the middle school, they're seeing more electives and more cool things that their peers are able to do, and they may not be able to be in that class because, you know, they're assigned into the Spanish immersion program. Now, one of the biggest things that we are modifying for next year is to try and change the curriculum in those courses to be able to add, so if, let's say they're in a grade and they're missing art, and they're missing, well, let's just say art, for example, trying to build in more art projects and similar kinds of things into the curriculum of the Spanish immersion, so that the students going through that program can get the same kinds of opportunities. Now, it's not going to be the same or identical, but it's going to be real effort to try and make things more hands-on, and make it related to the courses that they're missing, that they're not able to be a part of.
Because it's the Spanish language arts course that they're taking that is in place of the allied courses in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So those are the courses that they do miss out on because they're taking a Spanish language arts course.
So does that count as, okay, Spanish immersion in the middle school and an elective? Does it take the place of an elective? Is that why?
The Spanish language arts course does. The social studies course, they are taking social studies because they're just doing it in Spanish.
So that's
versus
just
English.
an
So that's
equal, so it's just the 1 hour difference?
It's the 1 hour.
Okay.
That they're adding in a new course, Spanish language arts, because they're still taking an English language arts course too. So that is the course that is.
So that's taking up their elective.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, so we really had to look at all options here because we're having less students in the program. And one option that we did look at is to move it down to just be 1 course instead of 2 in Spanish immersion. And I could find myself to be supportive of that up until I had more in-depth, rich conversations with some of our admin, and we really, as a result of further conversation, felt like it would be foolish for us to just give up, for lack of a better word, and just try and see this through and learn from, what is going on. I mean, again, this first cohort or 2, they're the first group going through, and we haven't had that experience in our school district. And like even moving this group into the middle school was new territory for us. And then there's some things that pop up that we learn from that we didn't anticipate, like, hey, they don't like missing some of this stuff, you know? So there's not any magic solution, but there's some things that we think that we can do to make it better.
So they would essentially be able to get the same sort of like art experience, but in Spanish. I mean, don't kids learn better that way anyway?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that that's a big aha that we have, that we need to change the programming to have it more hands-on, to be more focused on the areas that they're missing. Like do you remember what the allied are in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade?
So in 6th grade, it's tech, and then their literacy class, and then in 7th grade, it's art, art, health, and then a world language, which for them, I mean, the world language is, they don't really need that one, because that's more they're learning kind of basic Spanish. And then in 8th grade, it's STEAM, another health, and then world language again. I believe those are.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the biggies is, you know, yeah, can we teach health in Spanish? Yeah, we should be able to figure that out. And can we do more art projects in Spanish? Yeah, we should be able to figure that out. Right, and the foreign language piece that the other students are getting, that's already kind of built in already. So, I mean, there's just some things I wanted the board to be aware that, you know, we're learning from this. We're not gonna have we're gonna be carrying some classes to see this through that are smaller than the English speaking classes. I will say that I endorse the idea that was pitched to me to let's give it another year before we, you know, change our program altogether. But we need to put the effort in to modify the curriculum and the instruction to make it more hands-on and get these experiences for the students. And then the other piece is we need to be honest with ourselves after giving our best effort to modify things long-term, right? There may be a day that we will need to scale back and say, yeah, we do see the importance of having something to gap the 6th to 8th grade, you know, years before they get in high school, but it might not be able to be just 2 classes. It might just have to be one more kind of advanced Spanish kind of a course to bridge that gap. Or look at options on how potentially, you know, some of those students could actually take high school courses. And of course, you know, that's something that we could consider as well. Or if we get to a point where we thought that we need to just, you know, cut the Spanish immersion program altogether in middle school, that could be a future discussion. That's something that we hope not to ever have to go to, but we just need to be honest with ourselves and look at the variables. We owe it to the program and to the students to continue on, I believe, with the two classes in each grade, but take an honest evaluation of it at the end of next year to see where we're at.
Sounds like a great idea, I mean.
Student enrollment's obviously a key to that as well. You know, we had 270 kids when we were pulling, you know, 45 to 50 kids. Now we're trying to pull 45 to 50 kids out of about 220. It's a little bit tougher, so we're seeing some of that drop off. We just got to figure out, yeah, how we can still make it a very quality program and give these kids the opportunity to have that experience.
I mean, our goal is, I mean, those seals that I presented earlier tonight is that our students will be taking a Spanish language proficiency, the same one that these 2 students just took, they'll take a similar test. And I mean, the highest level you can get is a platinum seal. So the state of Minnesota offers a platinum seal. And so our goal is that all of our immersion students who've been studying for so long will reach that highest level of proficiency across all 4 domains. So that's reading, writing, speaking, and listening. We actually today in 5th grade, our 5th graders took the STAMP test for the first time because that's when we get their baseline Spanish language proficiency as far as all 4 domains. We've been tracking their reading Spanish since kindergarten, but now they're moving up. So they'll do that again in 8th grade as we look at placement. And we have students now already could qualify for some of these seals, but you also, that skill is something you have to maintain, right? You can't, I mean, the more you need to, it's like any skill, you need to practice it and maintain it. So, you wouldn't wanna just stop learning that, you wanna keep learning, so that's what, like, some of those courses in secondary can do too.
Is there special programming at the high school, or once they leave 8th grade, is just the Spanish options that are already there, or what does that look like?
Well, and you can help me here, and
Yeah.
of course, our new principal will help us. Yeah, Barb can kind of wash her hands of this one, but, you know, I think the idea is that the students after 8th grade, we would have some kind of assessment to test them into the appropriate high school class. I'm gonna just go on a limb to say they probably either test into Spanish 3 or Spanish 4,
Yeah.
or some level of even advanced,
Most likely the Spanish 3 or 4
yeah,
to go into.
yeah.
Okay. So there is so those 3 and 4 right now are college in the schools programs. So then you'll run into some other glitches like, they don't qualify for college in the schools because of their age. So that'll be a hurdle to figure out. And, I lost there was one other thing so if they go into 3 and 4, you know, so they'll still be 2 years theoretically. So then do we do the AP level, you know, how do you keep them in that language until they get to college?
You know, being a realist, we need to know that at some point we're gonna run out of options for them. Once they get the college credit and advanced placement kinds of opportunities, then, you know, they may need to go outside of our district if they wanna have additional Spanish.
Or they start a club.
Yeah, yeah.
A push club for everything.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, then we'll move on to the budget update. And Michelle, we're so glad to have you sit at the table today.
So glad.
Yes. It is much easier to do this in person. I'm gonna actually start backwards, starting with Fund 7 on the first sheet that's attached there. And I'm just gonna give a high-level synopsis of where we are with the budget. We are not completed with the budget. We are, you know, the legislature has finalized the fiscal bill. But other than, you know, the numbers we read off, we really don't know the rules of the game yet. And they'll have stuff coming up telling us what all that entails and whether we're adding staff in order to use that money or if we can use it with our current staff. So I'm just gonna start backwards with Fund 7 and go to Fund 1 because we'll go to the second sheet for Fund 1. Debt service, as you know, is what I call our house payment. That's basically levy dollars, and our revenue is usually higher, of course, because we have to collect 5% more based on statute to make sure that we make all payments. Building fund, Fund 6 is right now the parking lot bid or bond is the revenue and some interest and an estimate of what, you know, 1 month of expenses for the parking lot because June will be in 23. So we haven't done any extra work on that, but I will tell you in June when we meet, we will actually have to redo 2 years of Fund 6. I'll have a separate sheet for this current year because we received the bond proceeds last week. And of course we'll have to have 1 month of expenditures for the LTFM bond that we sold. And the good news there is, if you recall, one of the conversations we had was about the interest that we would be paying. Well, you know, we expected to have about 2.8 million in proceeds. With the premium, we actually received 3.4 million. So that pays about half of that. So we have extra money to put towards projects. So we will have a long conversation about that continuing on, because, you know, we're not gonna, we got a lot of projects going on. We're not going to start more this year, but we will have a lot of projects going on next year and probably even the following year. So there's a lot to do in that Fund 6 area. Community education, there isn't a lot of changes to that. We of course took out the grant dollars. There is no employee increase on the expense side. We usually don't do that until they settle because their staffing is so much smaller. There is an addition of a secretary in that area. Brian feels that we need additional staffing to do rec and enrichment more justice, because our childcare is booming, which is causing, you know, it's booming, but there's also more to do when you have more kids. So community ed overall looks good for next year. Not anticipating any huge issues. I will say our childcare is what is really making the revenue. They, you know, they're watching staffing levels, and they are full all the time, and there's always a waiting list because of lack, I'm sure, of childcare with them. Food service, they have a settled contract, so we do have salary increases in there for them. We also know that we struggle to fill our short hours positions, so throughout the year we have not had all our positions filled. We did not do any major changes on other categories that are worth noting. We do have $150,000 for equipment, which we had this year also in food service. As you see, we've got a $2.1 million fund balance there, so we will be spending that down some over the next few years to update equipment. Dish rooms are on our LTFM, so they can pay for the actual equipment. Can't pay for the flooring, obviously, or the walls electrical, but the actual equipment. The other thing that we took out due to free lunches coming in and breakfast for the state of Minnesota, we took out credit card fees, which is about $40,000 a year. So we changed that from revenue. That was the other significant change. So any questions on those smaller funds? And of course, more so with Fund 4, we will, there will be some changes probably coming from the legislature that as we get that all updated, we'll update the June budget for. Fund 1. So LTFM is not quite completed. We have to put the tennis courts right now. It's got $250,000 and $150,000 for what's there includes health and safety and our smaller projects that come up during the year that we plan for. We take an estimate of how much HVAC work that'll come up that isn't on the big list. So that leaves us about $295,000. Obviously, the tennis courts have to be added back in for next year. We have not done the calculation to see what the 1/3, 2/3 is for the summer, because we have to do it based on which year it falls in. So that is not completely updated. Operating capital includes a vehicle to plow snow, a truck. It's about 90,000. But otherwise, it's our software and all our normal stuff that we do. It's technology devices. There were not any major changes to that, and as you can see, we don't have enough revenue coming in to pay for all that in that area. We still have a good fund balance in operating capital, but that will drop quite a bit. By the end of the year, it'll go down to about 1.9 million, so we will have to make a decision on whether we continue to spend down operating capital or if we move 200,000 of software into the unassigned category. So, staff development and Q-Comp right now are basically our old numbers. There's some adjustments to staffing that will occur in staff development, and of course, just updating and tweaking the numbers for next year. The programming hasn't changed much in either area. So those we'll just tweak when I get back and next week and start setting up meetings with people involved in those areas. Technology assigned is what we budgeted last year. We will need to review that and make sure that fund balance will hold that extra 50,000 or the extra 30,000. In the spend down for cases because we added that last year. Program initiatives, this was planned, the dollar amount here was planned last year based on what we felt the needs would be, and we're doing this letters training, so we bought the materials for K2 this year. We will need to purchase 3.5 for this year. So that we have the correct materials for this training for our teachers to use. If our 23 budget comes out more towards that worst case scenario, we will most likely spend into that fund balance. So we might not have enough in our assigned fund balance to cover that 478. We do have a little bit of room in Fund 19, our last COVID numbers, and that's where I would move some of those dollars, and we might not be able to do everything that people would like, depending on where we're at once we shake everything out. The activity account is always plug numbers. That's the fundraising area for our students. Fund 19, the revenue currently includes ESSER $3 in both pots. The main pot, which we use to maintain our staffing, and the 550,000, which is a specialty pot of money that is for summer programming, extended time programming, things like that, mental health. Those dollars still need to be added on the expenditure side. But you will be looking at about 1.1 million in the first area. We got about 1.2 that should be left at the end of this year in the big pot. So that extra 100,000 will probably be our teaching and learning materials through program initiatives. And then we have to go through and be very careful about what we plan for the smaller pot that they separated out because of they're very stringent on the rules. So, but we will update that when I get back also. The unassigned area does not include include everything happening at the legislature. Our revenue does include our new compensatory dollars, but it doesn't include the 4%, it doesn't include the special ed cross subsidy, nor does it include any of all those smaller areas that Ben talked about earlier. So we still have that all to come to put into the revenue side. On the expenditure side, it does not have our estimates yet for salary increases. It does not have the dollar amount that we reduced yet for this year. I'll be meeting with Jason when I get back to get the nitty gritty on that. I'm getting to the point where I'll actually remember what he tells me, I think. So, right now, we're at 1.6 million, the variance. If you put the special ed, if you put all those things in when we ran it, you know, we're anticipating that we are going to get closer to that flat, being more flat, or within 1% of being flat. And we really need to be there. The unemployment piece is passing, but it looks like that they are going to give us some money, one-time money for everybody, and then it looks like there's some special ed para money going forward for the summer. So that hopefully has turned out a little bit better for us, but we don't have details on that yet either. We anticipate that by the first week of June, they will have our what if that we use to calculate student enrollment up. And they should be, since they really are finishing pretty much on time, we should be receiving emails that says, you know, they have workshops to tell us what it all means in the next couple of weeks. So we should be ready to rock and roll to approve our original budget like we do every year. And I will say this, it does not fix the next year. We are still looking at a very rocky year the following year with the COVID dollars coming off and, you know, most likely salary increases coming on. And the formula allowance was only 2% in the second year, so that didn't help us out much. Any high-level questions?
Does that 2% include the inflation that they talked about?
Nope, the inflation part starts the following year, in the next biennium. And that'll be interesting to see if that's all we get going forward, whatever inflation is. So it may or may not be any different than it's been for the last how many years. So, you know, legislature changes, we'll just have to see.
It's good to have you report it all too.
It's good to feel a little more human too.
Any other questions for Michelle? All right, then we'll move on to first reading of policy. And there's a summary there. Don, do you have anything to add to that?
No, everything's pretty much in the summary there, and a lot of the policies went out to different groups, so a lot of eyes are getting on them.
All right. We'll move on to the action section of the meeting, and we will move on to the roof bid. And I will entertain a motion to accept the roof bid from McDowell Roofing Company as presented.
So moved.
Motion made by Don, second by Sue. Or Chad. And we will vote by roll call, starting with Melissa.
Yes.
Sue, yes.
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 Motion carries. Then 12B is the activities fee. I will entertain a motion to accept the revisions to policy 599, student activities as presented.
So moved.
Motion made by Chad. Is there a second?
Can I ask questions?
After the second?
Okay, I'll second.
Melissa, second.
There you go.
Is there any discussion?
I'm learning.
There you go.
Oh, now I have some
Now you
discussion.
can have some discussion.
You know, I'm just like to keep you guys on your toes. Okay, so my question is, so we're changing the raise, I understand, so like the 200, and then instead of like for, let's just say the athletic activity piece, so it would be 200, but then we were taking away the discount for additional sports. And I think that it would make a large difference to parents in our community, even if it's not a large decrease for each additional activity. I think having that decrease for each additional activity would be a good idea. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we talked about this, you know, we had discussed the $50 increase quite a bit, and we discussed the $900 cap on families. We hadn't done a lot of discussion on the language in there that talked about a discount for a second and a third activity. You know, as we presented this to you, we eliminated that. However, I don't have super strong feelings if the board, you know, felt like they wanted to keep a discount of a $25, you know, because it would be $200 per activity at the high school. And if we kept the discount in there, then that second season would be $175 potentially, and a third season would then be $150. I guess I wouldn't recommend going any more than a $25 discount, but as it's presented here, it doesn't reflect a discount for the second and third. If the board chose to want to keep that, that would be an easy, you could pass this with an amendment that it would continue to have that $25 discount per sport at the high school level. And I guess I didn't really look at the middle school. You know,
They do the
same thing.
Yeah. And I realize that it's not a lot, but I do think the parents would appreciate the, you know, we have a lot of students that are three sport athletes, or, you know, they're in the musical and the sports, and I think that they would appreciate having just the consideration there that we appreciate your student.
I think at that time, you're gonna max out on your family.
For what?
You're gonna max out
You
for
still
family.
could, yes, yeah.
I
But even with
almost-
the discount, you still could.
Right.
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
pays out, so.
Yeah, I think you're gonna max that family out pretty fast with these new rates.
It's pretty much in proportion to where it was before.
Doesn't look like it would be that much faster, would it?
No. Because it was 700 or 750
750
before.
and it went.
Because if you got two
Went to
kids
900.
that
900, right.
do a couple
So that's 3
sports.
sports at $50, that's.
yeah, I mean, if you have two students, if you have two students and they're active in activities, yeah, you're gonna get to that 900. I mean,
So it's basically a wash, right?
when I talk to the activities department, they say they have a large number of families that just bring in the the $750 check at the beginning and say, here you go, we're gonna hit our max. That, because a lot of families just know that's gonna be the case.
So that being said, if it is a wash, do we just leave it as we have it stated here versus putting an amendment to it?
I do like Melissa's idea of having those tiered for sports from the aspect of, I think it encourages kids to play a second or third sport, where sometimes when you see it's 200, 200,
Right.
they might not.
I think it just shows parents that, you know, we understand how, you know, like, we have to raise these because we are the lowest of the low and we need the money to continue all the activities. But it does show, like, we understand that it's, you know, somewhat hard to. It's not an end all be all, and I understand it is a wash, but it does kind of just show from us, we get it, you know, we appreciate you bringing your kids, you know, that's just my thoughts on the subject.
There's plenty of research out there too about kids that are multiple sport participants that do better in life.
Well, they don't have time to get in trouble, right?
And most college coaches are looking for
Yeah.
sport athletes, they're typically not injured.
All right,
So we need to make that amendment then.
Yeah, I think unless somebody that's recently went to Robert's rules can say differently, my suggestion would be is that the person who made the motion, if they wanted to modify or amend their original motion, if that's what you chose to do, then you could do that.
So I want to amend the motion to reflect the discounted rate for the second and third sport events as was before this change,
Up $25.
up $25.
all right. And is there a second to that amendment?
I'll second it.
And is there, second Melissa, and is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We will then move on to the Minnesota State High School League Annual Membership Resolution, and I'll entertain a motion to accept that membership resolution as presented.
So,
Motion made by Chad, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Don. Is there any discussion?
I have a question. I'm so sorry, guys. That's just my job.
Okay,
right?
that's
Kind of.
what we want you to do.
Okay, so it's just probably because it's my first time kind of literally looking at all the details of this, but I was wondering if we had like everything that we had, like do on, it said on 208.02, the designated activity representatives. The governing board of each member school shall select individuals to represent its school in boys sports, girls sports, speech and music. Do we have, is that like on the advisory committee and we have like a group that, how does that work?
Well,
Sorry.
we have an activities advisory committee in our school district. We do have a board member, Eric Stramberg,
Right.
currently sits on that. And then I believe he is also our liaison with the State High School
Yes,
League. That
yes.
is an assignment
Yes.
that the board chair gives as well.
So we have
And then-
individuals that
yes.
represent like parents and other
Well-
people too on the, that's in a different,
Yeah.
that's
But
two.
as far as the designees, Darren does go through and has a different designee for each of the different activity sports.
Okay, all right, that, and then I just kind of wanted to, I guess, verify that we have that.
Does that activities committee meet like quarterly or?
Quarterly, but sometimes we ask to meet more often, like I've asked to have them schedule another meeting before the end of the school year, because we are analyzing the idea of adding Positive Coaching Alliance programming back into our system. And I felt like it was important for us to have the advisory, activities advisory committee weigh in on that. That's gonna be our recommendation to them. I feel like they'll probably support that. And the other piece that I wanted to put in front of them is we are implementing, and so this will maybe blow your mind, because that we haven't had one of these, but a coach's handbook that will have really specific procedural expectations for all coaches, and we'll run that by them as well. So yes, quarterly, but we do add meetings as needed in addition.
And just answering Melissa's questions earlier today, the advisory committee is advisory, but if there's like a Minnesota State High School League violation, that's done by Darren and or
Correct.
Barb, or,
Yep.
That's nothing to
Yeah, and
do with
that's,
the rest
yeah,
of
it's
the,
on our administrative page, on the State High School League, so Darren is our boys representative and our girls representative. I'm our Title IX officer, then it lists like yearbook, choir, band, and those pieces, so they're all listed there.
but the violation stuff is all set.
that's
Yeah, that's
nothing
all
to do
separate.
with this, that's.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Two other points of information is, one is the high school league generally will put out a new video each year, and they'll ask board members to watch that. We have typically sent that to you in an email, so you can watch that on your own time. And then I believe Eric Minks, what's his role on the board? He's the, is he the secretary?
Or
He's the
chair,
Or.
or
He's the clerk.
The clerk. Sorry.
Word,
The-
we'll
the-
get there.
The clerk. So I received a DocuSign, because they're trying to do this all electronically without written this year. So now, once the board would approve this resolution, the clerk will get this in his email, and I've given them his email, so we need to remind him to check that and sign that for the district. So I'll try and mention that, but if you see him, please remind him, take a look at that.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion on the table, is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. There were no additions to the agenda. We have graduation on June 2nd, and an upcoming board meeting, policy and board meeting on June 20th. We only have one in June. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Someone.
Motion made by Chad, second by Melissa. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And we are adjourned.
Thanks, Floyd.